All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and peace and blessings upon all of you. So, welcome to this podcast, Pathways to Peace. I am your host, Coach Maryam, and as you all of you know that I'm a blogger on Deep Life, and recently have a published book on self-based motivation called Faith, Purpose, and You. Today, I am honored to actually let you know that we have a guest up here, the author of Seven Steps to Freedom, Gilbert Mane. So Gilbert is actually uh, a, was a teacher and became a more dedicated one when he actually found some when he actually found that a school which with some practical wisdom. So I want to invite Gilbert and want to know more about him through his own words and about his book a little. So Gilbert, welcome aboard.
Welcome. Thanks, Maryam, and good morning to you. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Welcome, you're welcome. It's an honor for me too.
Good.
So talking about, you have been on TEDx talk, right? For the
Yes.
with the topic education for unity. So
Yes, I did it. Yeah.
what inspired you? Because I think your journey started from there, right?
Yes. Well, my journey, I was thinking about this, and my journey really started from as young as I can remember. I basically always wanted to know what was really going on. That was the question that would always puzzle me. How did people know what they knew? Why did they say what they said? Why did I say what I said? Why did I do what I did? Particularly when I would do things that I didn't want to do or knew I shouldn't do, and when I would fail to do the things that I knew I should do, or say things that were hurtful or unthinking and uncaring. And I would puzzle over this. I thought, why do people do this? Why do I do it? And I struggled with that for many, many years before finding some places and some people and some great teachers who could actually lead me on the journey. That's where it really began. And I can, if I thought about it, I would go back even when I was very, very young. Those were the things that I was thinking about.
That's really, I think these are really basic questions that everyone starts with when trying to find their purpose and their paths to freedom, right? So your book, Seven Steps to Freedom, actually resonates with a lot of faiths, with
Yes,
diverse faiths, right? So
yes,
Gilbert, your book emphasizes breaking free from internal and external limitations.
yes.
How do you define freedom and how it can be applied universally overall?
Well, the one thing freedom isn't is just having some sort of space or liberality or even wealth or whatever in life. All the externals. You can have a big house, you can have a lovely car, you can have all the good things, even friends and family. But if internally you're struggling with yourself, then you're not free. I mean, clearly, everyone. It's almost too simple to say that if you've got all the money in the world, you've got thousands of people around you who admire you, but you feel terrible for whatever reason and in whatever way. You feel fear, you feel jealousy, you feel insecure, you feel hatred, whatever. You are not free, in my opinion, and I think in everyone else's. It's sort of obvious that it has to be an internal condition. I remember hearing a story once about a woman who survived concentration camps in Nazi Germany, and it was only when she was able to forgive that she walked free. And she actually said, I saw it was on a video, and she said, I left Auschwitz 50 years ago but I only walked out. I walked out the gates of Auschwitz 50 years ago, but I was only free when I was able to forgive. And what I took from that was that it was she was still suffering, and clearly, of course, there was a terrible situation, and you wouldn't want to demand of her anything other than she was capable of giving. But she was finally able to forgive after 50 years, and she walked free. And that's what I really mean by freedom. It's an internal condition of being able to step free of your own, of the things that burden you.
That's really well said, because actually, when I related to Islam, that what you just said, it's truly, it begins like forgiveness is something in Islam that you do for your own selves, for your own
Mm,
benefit. So yes, it completely does resonate, but it's a very difficult task to do for anyone.
yes,
It's the most difficult
yes.
task to do. So how would you let anyone break such limitations through your 7 steps?
Yes, well, if we're on to the 7 steps start with hearing something from someone who knows what they're talking about, who suggests a better way to you, and that you have something inside you which responds to it. Someone tells you of a book or a teacher, or it might be a film, it might even be a piece of music or something, but usually it's some sort of teacher in some sort of faith or philosophical tradition who has the wisdom to catch your state and suggest something that will help you. And then but you have to have something inside you which nods. There's a nod of agreement to that, because we're surrounded by it all the time. I mean, we swim in an ocean of wisdom. It's bizarre in our modern world, in every bookshop, on every film, and you can go anywhere. I mean, there's obviously places where wisdom seems to be in short supply, but if you want it, you can get it on the internet, you can Google anything. But if you're not ready to hear it, if your ears are not open, then the wise can speak till they're blue in the face, but you won't be nodding. So the first step to going free is to hear something that catches your attention, that makes sense to you, and that you say yes, yes to. I can do that.
That's actually the first step. And
Hmm.
I think there's it reminded me of the quotation that we listen to argue rather than we listen to understand. So I think
Yes,
many people hear with that kind of intention also. So maybe that's why they are not able to forgive or let these negativities out of them. And
yeah,
that actually stops and puts a blockage in their way so that they can work on them externally or internally. Because internal
yes.
work comes first. Automatically
Hmm.
your external starts, resonating with you. It synchronizes. So many listeners here struggle with balancing spiritual and aspirations and morning challenges like stress and social pressure. So amidst these
Yes.
life demands, what would you suggest that what are those practical advices that you can give to the readers or listeners of this podcast? Like how can they achieve what they want to?
Well, first of all, I'd say I understand all too well that basically the pressures of life, kids, school, soccer,
Yes.
traffic, red lights when you need a green one, all of these things, these are the small change of life.
Mm.
And I remember when in my path, my spiritual path, the meditation, the universals, all of these things, yes, sure. But what happens when the shopkeeper is a bit rude to you, when the waitress doesn't bring your order, when, these are the sort of, where is the wisdom then? It falls through the cracks. So my suggestion to start with is to just create a little bit of space in your life for wisdom to enter in the times when you really, really need it. Um, and in my book, I do have quite a number of exercises, but the simplest and most practical one is at just once or twice a day, sit down somewhere quietly with no real agenda except to just simply be present and to feel your body sitting in the chair, feel the skin, connect with your senses, look, taste, touch, smell. The mind will jump about a bit. Of course it does, because that's what the mind does. It's quite good at that. So then just keep coming back. The mind will jump around. Yes, fine. Don't worry about that. Don't self-criticize and don't criticize the mind. It's doing what it's trained to do, but just keep coming back to the feet on the floor, the clothes on the skin, the breath entering and leaving the body, and just listen and do that for a minute, half a minute, 2 minutes. We're not really, don't overdo it, because otherwise we set up expectations and failure, and we sort of cruising for failure. And do that, say, twice a day. And if it helps, set up a special time. The kids are at school, you've come home, you haven't started, you're not at work yet, or you've just got to work, your computer's booting up. You have a sort of almost a ritual. And you do that twice a day, and you just create a little bit of space in your life, and it's weirdly effective. It's bizarrely effective. You just do that, and then let nature begin to take its course. There's more to go, and there's a few other things you can do, but one of the ways I would counsel people to begin is where you are, which is here, and when you are, which is now. So that's always the starting point, and get sort of, I don't know, get practiced, get a habit of being in the here and the now twice a day for half a minute and a minute. And again, as I say, the mind will skip about a bit, it does, but it will gradually settle down. The mind actually it would like someone in charge of it. And it's time for you to show up and show it who's boss.
I truly believe that, because let me share a little glimpse of one of the ways that I was being taught when on a Sufism course, and I had attended that meeting in person. So it is called actually Muraqaba, the thing you are talking about. And Muraqaba is something, meditation, like just like you said, that you have to sit and just connect with nature, be quiet in a peaceful space of yours. Maybe it can be any time of the day. But the thing is, again, you have to make it habit. And yes, it really does work, the work. You are absolutely right. I actually believe that what you said is quite true. So, as a reader, I have a question that the steps emphasizes actually a broader, inclusive understanding of faith, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and that isn't specified to any doctrines. So, how do you navigate these concepts in a diverse way?
Yeah, well, I think what I was really trying to do was to decouple the 7 steps. It is based on a Hindu Indian philosophy of Yoga Vasishta.
Yes.
And so you could think, oh, well, this is a Hindu thing. But it isn't really, because in my book as well, I relate it to the Christian Jewish Bible. Really, not so much to make it a religious book, but to just show that it is universal. I'm not well enough versed in the Quran to make those sorts of comparisons, but I'm absolutely positive that it will be in there. You'll probably be able to tell me better. But the 7 steps, they're actually the journey that everyone takes on every single spiritual path. So, for example, you're a Muslim, you're a Hindu, you're a Jew, you're a Christian, you're still going to be troubled by jealousy and fear and hatred and anger. You're still going to beat yourself up for your micro failings and maybe some of your macro ones. So you're still going to need someone external, because that's how it does begin. It's very unusual for someone to be able to do this from the inside, from the very beginning. I mean, there are these people, but they're unusual. Most people need a mentor, a teacher, a guide, a priest, an imam, a rabbi, whatever, or just a friend to help them with their journey. And I found a school that was very, very consciously not linked to any faith. It was totally not faith-based, and very specifically so that it could welcome people from all faiths. No one was excluded. And so it wasn't wasn't a Christian place, wasn't a Jewish place, wasn't a Muslim place. So it's a human place. I suppose that's what I would say. And so all people need help. All people need to become free. Everyone wants to be happy and free. The guidance is there waiting for everyone. The first step is to hear something that triggers something in your mind. It could be something from the Bible, like forgive your enemies, love your enemies. I mean, it's a very Christian thing, and it's a bit unusual, a lot of religions don't really emphasize that, in Judaism, it's more faith to the love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and your neighbor as yourself. In Islam, it's the power of the faith in the single God, the merciful and the compassionate. It's those sorts of things that trigger us a response. And also there are people who are not religious, who are atheistic. I mean, just a bit of background, I was raised in a very secular family. Our religion was not a very strong part of my brother and my upbringing, to say the least. And yet both of us, my brother and I, both found our way to a spiritual path. And this is the path that appealed to us because it wasn't really wedded to any particular religious ceremonial tradition. So yes, that's what I'd say, that everyone wants this, that the 7 steps, well, what I've tried to set out in the book is a way that everyone can follow without, and I think importantly, without it cutting across their religious belief. So no one's being asked to do something that, defies their faith or
Yes.
believe in something that isn't. Look, again, as I say, I'm not well versed I'm not a theologian, but I believe this path it's not sourced from Hinduism, but it's available to everyone. And I think a faithful Muslim, a faithful Jew, a faithful Christian would be well able to follow it and remain very much within their faith tradition.
Very true. Yes, that's absolutely what I thought when reading and going through your book when I was writing the review. Because the book that I just wrote and published is actually first it had the edition called God Motivation. So actually, it was let me just summarize the concept. It's actually based on that motivation triangle that connects all of us with a basic and inbuilt purpose that we all covered in here in this world is humanity, to serve humanity. And that's connected to God. So this is what my book was about. And what you just said, totally, I would agree with this. And your book is actually uh, one of those books that I actually, when I was reading it, I could easily, understand it and believe it in a way that didn't affect my faith. So, so that's the very beautiful way to express. And I really like that expression. So both of us actually emphasize that challenges equals steps, challenges actually equals to opportunity for growth, right?
Yes.
So I want to know that how does your perspective on trials differ? Because challenges comes with trials.
Yes.
So I want to know that how would how it is different, or is it common in any way for people?
Yeah, the whole question of trials and obstacles, I mean, I think I should preface my remarks by saying that if you've had serious trauma and psychological, if you're in real trouble, you need help. You need to find a professional, psychological, psychiatric, whatever, medical even help. My remarks aren't meant to substitute for professional care for people who have had genuine and very tragic events in their life, loss of loved ones, these sorts of things, have gone through war or whatever. You know what I'm saying.
Yes.
But in general, if we're talking to the general mass of people who live, and well, if I can use the word normal, but I don't mean that in a pejorative sense for anyone else who hasn't experienced that. But if you're talking about, people who live in the mainstream, everyone faces challenges all the time. Like I said, a red traffic light when you're in a hurry,
Mm.
a surly shopkeeper when you need a bit of love or something like that, or a spouse or who's just not on their game, or children. Or I taught children, and they were great for this, for challenging you, for presenting opportunities. I think that would be a nice way of putting it, at
Mm.
every step of the way. But I think that is probably the hint there, is to see them as opportunities, to see challenges, obstacles, things that sort of thrown up in the way as means for growth. I mean, the question is, are you going to be crushed underneath them, or are you going to step on top of them and move upwards? Are you going to ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I grow? Why has this been sent to me? Here, religious faith is, I think, very helpful, because we know that God is beneficent, God is compassionate, and He is just. That is just, they're simple facts that anyone who, with any sense of a religion, knows this to be true in their life. All these smarty pants atheists who talk about God's existence and whatever. Who cares? What do you really want? You don't want to know if He exists or not. You wanted to know if He loves you. That's the only question that you need to know. And people who are religious, and I count myself now sort of basically, not formally, but among them, that's what you know in your heart. So He's not going to send you anything that you can't handle. That's a good thing to start with. One, this obstacle is not something I can't handle, because by definition, because I've got it. It's right here. It's in front of me. Second, am I going to grow from it, or am I going to shrink and fall back? Am I going to rise above it, use it as a stepping stone, or is it going to be a millstone that's going to drag me down? These are good questions to ask. And then, as I say, the practical question is, what can I learn from this? What is this situation teaching me? What do I need to learn? How do I need to grow? What resources do I need? It could mean you need to ask for help from other people. It could mean that it's a door has been shut in your face, and need to go and find another door. That door's not one that God wants you to walk through. These are the sorts of questions that I would ask, and principally, as we started this conversation, come into the present moment, come into the here and now, be here, be now, give your attention to what's happening. Because one of the things I do find, which I think is interesting, is their attention will skip away from pain.
Mm.
They will avoid it. Look, everyone will do this. So my advice is, take a nice deep breath, come into the present moment, and put your attention on the situation and how you're feeling about it, because they're both there to be learnt from. I hope that's not too sort of discursive an advice, but come into the present moment and give your attention and grow and learn from the situation.
Absolutely correct. Because here I want to relate it with one of the verses of the Quran, that Allah, in one of the verses, Allah tells us that don't burden a soul which it can hear. So
Mm,
He always, just like you said, that if you know with your heart that Allah loves you, that God loves you, then
mm,
you know that nothing is going to be that much painful for you. Only if you believe that. And in another verse, Allah tells us that this dunya is basically a word in Quran which is used for present moment, like
mm.
right now, right here.
Yeah,
So this dunya is just a test case for you. So
yeah,
it's how Quran addresses the trials, and Allah addresses the trials that one should actually carry on with and fight them with. So it's, yes, it's not about focusing just on pain, but to find the right opportunities, that the other opportunities that are there actually at that painful moment. So
yes.
I agree with you. So how can we all contribute to a shared understanding of this inner peace and universal feeling?
Sorry, I'm sorry, Maryam, one more time.
Okay, how can we all contribute to a shared understanding of inner
Ah,
peace
yes.
and universal feeling?
Ah, yes, yes. That's such a beautiful question, Maryam. Thank you so much. It's a yes, I think it's probably fair to say that if we look around the world at the moment, we could do with a little bit more of that because there just seems to be so much misunderstanding and a lack of sort of compassion, really, that I see. And at the same time, there's a ton of good things happening. Wonderful things are happening, and these are happening again in the they don't make the news. That's the that's the problem with being kind. One way of reaching across the aisle is I know you said listen to my TED talk, and in my TED talk I told a story of talking to a woman who was from an ethnic group who had suffered at the hands of another ethnic group, which is just such a common story. And it's true. I mean, if you read the history books, she's not wrong. She wasn't wrong, but she then kept talking about how her group, her people, were endlessly virtuous and wonderful and wise and clever and whatever. And this other ethnic group that had been the bane of their life were terrible and mean and awful and rotten and all that stuff. And I remember going away from that conversation and just thinking about it and realizing that the game I called it the best worst game, that if we compare our best with their worst, we win and we walk away feeling happy, but nothing has improved. Your hatred, your anger, your resentment is still there, and possibly increase. So then you can play another game. You can compare your worst with their best, and suddenly you're crummy and terrible and awful and insecure, and you feel you still nothing has changed, and everyone feels awful. Or if you really want to feel really bad, like the whole world is going to hell in a handcart, you compare your worst with their worst, and no one comes out well from that one. Everyone's got something. Every people on earth, every person on earth has got something in their past which you can drag up and parade around and criticize them for. There is no perfect person who has nothing in their past that is that where they walk in perfection. So there's that. So what I'd prefer to play is the best game. You look at every faith, every tradition, every culture, every nation, every philosophy, and pull out the best. What is the best of Islam? What is the best of Judaism? What is the best of Christianity? What is the best of philosophy? What even is the best of atheism? You can even what is the best of the Western culture? What is the best of the East? What is the best of Africa? What are the what does everyone have to contribute to the human symphony? What do the Chinese, the Caucasians, the Arabs, the whoever have to say that is beautiful and true and creative and interesting and helpful and wonderful? And that way, everybody can rest in their own. You don't have to cross over and you don't have to convert. You stay who you are, but you can just appreciate the human symphony. It's to me a wonderful way of living, and it really, really very helpful way of living. It doesn't mean you ignore the shortcomings. Of course, you have to deal with them. This is when we talked about overcoming trials and tribulations. Sometimes people do bump up against each other, and sometimes just people don't get on. I mean, I was talking to a very dear friend of mine who's a faithful Christian, and he was just talking about there was this woman in his church who he just finds so annoying. And I said to him, well, yeah, as a Christian, you're probably meant to forgive and be
Mm.
compassionate, understanding. But if she really drives you crazy, just limit your, just avoid her during the tea break. It's sometimes you just have to be practical as well. But at the same time, there's no point in going around, thinking about her as this terrible person. Don't do that because it's you, not her. It's this is our first question. How do you go free? You deal with the one person in the world that you can deal with, which is yourself, not the other person. You can't change her.
Yes.
But you can change yourself. But like I say, getting a sort of a filter through which you look, where you play the best, our best, my best, your best game, then that is a way of navigating, I think, if we could spread that one, then I think the world would be a better place tomorrow. If everyone, well, this afternoon, it's still morning for you, isn't it? So if everyone started from now, then the world would be a much better place.
As a wrap-up question here now, what would you suggest for our listeners here that how to navigate their own spiritual or secular journey? How should each of them pursue or define their purpose?
Well, I think you've got to look at your life as a whole. I think. Well, this is what I did. I can only say what I did. That I knew that I had an aim in life. Well, obviously to get through my university, to get a job, to get my family, make sure they're happy and healthy and well off and cared for. There are some basic things you just have to do, but at the same time, what do you want in life? I think you need to really sit down and consider that question. What is it that you actually want? I mean, when I was teaching, I taught young children up in the age between the 5 and 12, and we had a weekly philosophy class where we just asked, the children were pretty free to ask whatever they wanted to and discuss interesting questions. And one of the things I asked them, this might be a bit confronting, but I said to them, look, when you die, what do you want written on your gravestone? What do you want people to say? How would you like your life to be summarized when it's all over? What's in 6 or to 12 words or less? And the answers were very interesting. Like one boy said he would like to have cured cancer. And I thought, for an 11-year-old, that's pretty good.
Yes.
It's very ambitious, but why not? To reach for the stars. And then they did this thing which boys often do, and which I wasn't ready for it because I'm not as smart as I look or think I am. They said, well, what about you, sir? What would you like on your gravestone? And it was very strange because I just hadn't, I thought of the question to ask them, but I hadn't actually thought of the answer for me. And what came out of my mouth without even thinking was, he freed others.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, actually, that's good. I'd like that. And then later on, when I was thinking about it, I thought you could add to that, and he made it look easy. Because effort and struggle is not really part of my repertoire. I like things to be easy. But I think people need to sit down and consciously and seriously consider what it is that they really want in life, and then go and get it. Set a plan. Obviously, I assume it will be a good thing you want. You want to be remembered as being compassionate, wise, intelligent, caring, a good father, a good mother, a kind colleague, whatever. Maybe even a superb sportsman. I don't know. People have the weirdest ideas, but as long as it's healthful and not harmful to others, then anything's fine. And then you set about going about getting it, and with one addendum, that you do need to look after yourself. This thing that they say, the oxygen mask principle, which is when you're on an airplane, they tell you to put on your oxygen mask first and then put on the oxygen mask of other people. So you can't, if you're busy struggling to put an oxygen mask on someone else and you're and you're running out of air, you're not going to be helpful. You need to look after yourself first. You need to look after yourself physically. You need to eat well and rest. You need to look after yourself mentally, so you're stimulated and reading interesting books. And you need to look after yourself emotionally and be connected to your friends and your family and engage in forgiveness and compassion. And you need to look after yourself spiritually. You need to have a belief, an understanding of a spiritual path. In relation to, I know we're probably running out of time, but in relation to the faith, the connections of all the faiths, all the religions and all philosophies only have two things to say. They tell you how to deal with your fellow man, your fellow creatures, the environment, the trees, the plants, the planet. So that's what I would call a horizontal relationship, you and everyone that you can see and run into. And then there's a vertical. The second thing they do is they tell you how to relate to God, which I would call a vertical relationship. In other words, how to relate to a higher plane. That's the only two things they say. And the flavor and the color and the beauty and the creativity of each religion comes in the detail. The forms, the ceremony, the songs, the rituals, all of these things, but they're all doing two things. Love your neighbor as yourself and love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. That would be the Jewish Christian version of it. Islam would have its own formulation of that, but that would be get those two things right as well. That I would say, get your relationships with the world right, and get your relationship with God right, and formulate your purpose in life.
So thank you so much for being on pathway to peace and have a great conversation with you today. So for the listeners, I am going to put all the links related to Gilbert's book and his TEDx talk also. So you can just, and also the review I gave on my blog so that you can go and get his book. So that is it for today. Have a really, really nice day and peace and blessings sending over to all of you. Allah Hafiz.